All right, we're back with you inside of the Africa Forum. This is Running African, and in this segment of the program, we're standing by to speak with, changing gears a bit, and topics as we go now to the phone lines to speak with Dr. Ajamu Nangwaya. And we're going to be looking this morning with Dr. Ajamu on a vexing issue for Jamaica here, which is the extent to which toxic products are being used in the agricultural sector. But obviously he can't speak for the agricultural sector. He's going to be speaking on behalf of farmers and wannabe farmers like ourselves and just general Jamaicans who are using some of these products and the dangers inherent. Also, some of the cases that are ongoing right now across the world. We have been talking about these for years. For example, Roundup is a very, very serious issue, and I think this is where we're coming back to again, because the Jamaican government is still importing that, and farmers are still using that. It's poisoning people. My father was poisoned by Roundup. It's an interesting thing because I was here marching from Otrius Town Square to Roaring River and back, and leading all of the town, speaking on my box, standing on my box literally and speaking from the town squares. And my father was using Roundup and was poisoned by it, and I had no idea. This is how serious this is. Anyway, so our brother, Dr. Ajamu, joining me on the phone lines. My brother Ajamu, how are you doing?
Hi, good morning, Sister Kabu. How are you doing? I'm pretty good.
I am well. I'm well if you two are well. I wanted to get your I wouldn't have a plan for it, but since we've been talking about it all morning,
right.
Your quick response and analysis in a minute or two of what went down in America with the elections last week, Thursday into Friday.
Well, nothing significant happened. What actually has taken place is that we had the election of someone who's less hypocritical about his imperialist adventures abroad, especially when it comes to the Middle East. Because if we're looking at foreign policy, the behavior of the Democrats and the Republicans are the same. Mm-hmm. If we look at Palestine, mm-hmm. both of them are supporting Israeli aggression against the Palestinian people, the genocide going on there. Mm-hmm. Only thing is that because the Democratic Party has Arab Americans within its constituency and peace-loving people, mm-hmm. They sometimes give rhetoric that would communicate the impression that they're in favor of people. But mm-hmm. they're not. Mm-hmm. They're totally supportive of Israeli aggression because Israel serves a role in policing the Arabs in the Middle East and in controlling their oil. Mm-hmm. So there's no difference. And the domestic policy, there's no difference because Kamala Harris was saying, I am a capitalist because she was being accused of being a communist because of the link to her father as a Marxist economist at Princeton.
Yes.
So she made it clear that I am committed to capitalism. Both of them are committed to capitalism at home and abroad. And capitalism is not in favor of those of us who are from the ranks mm-hmm. of the sufferers. Mm-hmm. So nothing has changed because when we look at the Democrats and the Republicans, they're two branches of the same party.
Yes.
They are our class enemies.
Yes.
So we have to build movements to challenge them, to win concessions in terms of economic policies, social programs. But we can't look to the Democrats or the Republicans as solutions to our problem. They're both class enemies.
Exactly.
And that's how we should look at it.
Exactly. And, one thing I didn't mention earlier, but as you're talking, it reminds me of it, with them capitalistic neoliberal agenda that we noticed. Mm-hmm. The Heritage Foundation, which out of which Project 2025 is coming from, is a Margaret Thatcher. It's a Thatcherite organization with people like Niall Gardner out of the US who worked with Margaret Thatcher, who, along with Ronald Reagan, oversaw that whole process of the neoliberal agenda.
Right.
So that it shows you that really both operating, the Lincoln Project might be is the opposite of the Heritage Foundations. It's just two parts to the very same goal.
Right. No, absolutely. It's a similar thing when we think about the two capitalist parties in Jamaica, the People's National Party and Jamaica Labour Party. They're both class enemies of the working class. So when we see entertainers run into conferences of one party or the other and acting as if one will be better than the other, they're committed to the same neoliberal capitalist policies that attack social programs and that put the burden of our well-being and poor families who do have nothing. So we can't look to having better access to education because they believe in defunding education and say people should save their own money and finance their education. And we don't have the money. The wages are so low, we don't have the opportunity to save to finance our education. If we become sick, we don't have any savings. But they will cut funding to public health, forcing us to depend on our own resources, and we don't have it. The charitable sector can't meet the cutback from neoliberal underfunding of hospitals, schools, recreational facilities. They're terrible.
Yes.
But they give the impression through rhetoric that one may be in favor of poor people and the other is not. They're both against us. But the difference between the fox and the wolf is what's represented in parties, especially two-party political system like in the United States or Jamaica. Democrats, Republicans, the PNP and the GLP, they're both enemies of the working class. And that's how we should see it.
And talking about enemies of the working class, here's something that we have been fighting for a very long time on this island in Jamaica. We've taken it to the very highest level, and it is still a problem in Jamaica, which is how chemicals are being used in agriculture, the types of chemicals that they're using in agriculture. I want to talk a little bit about that because tell me if as much as you know and can explain to us the current state of the toxic products that are being used in the Jamaican agricultural sector. And I know you yourself are looking at this right now. What inspired you to take this on?
Well, I'm committed to non-chemical farming and a natural way of engaging and producing food because it's just better for us in terms of our health. We don't have poisons coming into our body. But also, it doesn't destroy the very environment that we need, where you're reducing biodiversity in terms of plant life and animal life from using pesticides, but also in terms of human health for farm workers and farmers, and even us as consumers when we think about pesticide residues in the food that we're consuming. So it's just bad all around for the very environment that we need to survive, but also for the people and animals in it. We cannot continue on this path. And because, for example, we're looking at the Jamaican case, it's claimed that Jamaica engaged in an overuse of pesticide, that our use of pesticide in Jamaica is higher than the world average. And this, even the Pesticide Control Authority, a state organization, a Jamaican government organization, they have confirmed that we overuse pesticide in Jamaica. Can you imagine that we're way above the world average in terms of pesticide use?
And the question is, when since? How did that happen?
Well, remember, in the 1960s, we had the Green Revolution, where they started to introduce pesticide in terms of farming. Took on a more industrial model. You have larger farms, so they took away land from poor people, forced them to become agricultural laborers, and have us working in these big farms. And they believe that to meet the need for food, they had to use these chemicals, pesticides, and they had to use chemical fertilizer in order to produce food for this rapidly growing population. So that's what they have talked about. So when we see big farms and we see pesticide use, it's part of that Green Revolution from the 1960s. In Jamaica, we're importing between 2.7 to 3.5 million kilograms of pesticide every year. And over 50% of that goes to agricultural sector. So they will use pesticide, for other things, for lawns and other things, So, it's a really major problem. And when we consider that we're using pesticide above the world average, it's very dangerous because what has happened, what they have done to us especially in the small farming sector, it let us believe that we can't farm without using insecticide, without using fungicide and herbicide. And herbicide is a big thing because even in terms of controlling weeds, that's what we're not doing. We're using Roundup to control weed and even other dangerous chemicals. And Roundup is classified as one of the highly hazardous pesticides. And all over the world, like progressive people have been pushing for eliminating highly hazardous pesticides. And that's the term they use for
Roundup. Do you know what the Jamaican government has said in recent times about Roundup? Because there were national protests led by us. I refer myself. We were leading those protests nationally across the island, and there was a response from the government of Jamaica. I'm not quite sure if you're aware that basically what the then Minister of Agriculture said was that Roundup posed, in my own words, paraphrasing him, posed no danger. And that we would still be importing that into the island. But can you talk to us about how these toxic products affect soil quality, water sources, biodiversity, but also the human body, the biology of the human body?
Right. What I should say now that the work that you have done, you and other people around controlling or eliminating highly hazardous pesticides, I think they have heard. They heard it because in 2022, March 2022, they launched a pesticide research project in Jamaica. The actual name of the project is Pesticide Residue Research, and this is by the Pesticide Control Authority, and it's a government body. So they're looking into the use of pesticides. It's a 2-year project, so it should end this year or next year. So it's a 2-year project to determine the use and level, determine the level of use of imported pesticide into Jamaica, and also to determine the level of pesticide residue in the environment. Because this same body, the Pesticide Control Authority, between 2009 and 2014, they found 11%. In 11% of the vegetables and fruits that they surveyed, local vegetables and fruits, they found 11% of pesticide residue in it. And that can be dangerous because the buildup of pesticide in our body can affect our hormones, it can contribute to cancer. So this is very real. So when we protest, the times when people say, oh, let's protest, not come out of it. But I think what they did in terms of this pesticide residue project was a result of the concern raised by you and other people about pesticide use. They're not going to credit you for forcing their hands in doing it. But nonetheless, this is what they're doing. But
let's see. Are you optimistic about what might come out of that?
No, because they've done this abroad. In the imperialist countries where the environmental movement is much more stronger in terms of pushing for changes, they have done similar things. They have done the research, they have done the studies. But remember, they are here. They're in the pockets of the chemical companies. These are the companies that can make donations to election campaign. These are companies that can hire former politicians as consultants. We don't have that type of money as poor people. They listen to these wealthy capitalists, killers of people's dreams and aspirations. So they're not going to do anything to go against that. However, they will act if we build strong social movements to pressure them. So they will concede because they don't want the system to break down. So they will bend a little until we get distracted by something else. Then they take back the gains that we want. This is a tactics that they've used. But it is really dangerous in terms of pesticide in the environment because pesticide, these are confirmed scientific research outcomes that they have found. It contaminates the air, the soil, groundwater. So even when we use chemical fertilizer, the thing about it was different from using, what they call using like organic method of soil fertility, is that it runs off into our lakes. It contaminates aquatic life. So plants and animals their life can be compromised. They don't reproduce as a result of the leaching of pesticide. There are no pesticides, but chemical fertilizer into the lake. So, we look at that, so we can have contamination of air, water, and groundwater, soil.
Break, my brother, Dr. Ajamu Nangwaya. I said a short break, but here we are, 6 or 7 minutes into this whole thing. But here we are. So just to go right, let me do this. This hour from 9 to 10 is brought to you courtesy of Excelsior Community College, celebrating 50 years of academic excellence. That the hour from 9 to 10 brought to you courtesy of Excelsior Community College, celebrating 50 years of academic excellence. All right. Thank you so much, Excelsior, for coming on board, sponsoring an entire hour. We appreciate that. All right. So, Dr. Ajamu, you were telling me just as we went into the break about how these products like Roundup and the different toxins, the pesticides and so on, these toxic products, how they affect the environment, the water sources, and so on. And one of the things you talk about was also, and you mentioned briefly cancer. Can we go back there a bit? Because there's a lot happening with in other jurisdiction where Roundup, for example, is on trial, and the manufacturers of Roundup have been ordered to pay millions, billions if not, of dollars out to persons who have taken class action suits and others against the producers, the manufacturers of Roundup. But here in Jamaica, these things are coming in, and with the permission of the Ministry of Agriculture, and where the technical people are rather. What do you think is the role of the technical people in properly advising the less technical in the ministry?
Well, Sister Kabu, let me just finish us briefly highlight the effects of pesticide use on the environment.
Yes.
Because we talk about the pollution of air, soil, and groundwater. And groundwater is very important because we use it, we consume it.
Yes.
But also, we have, through pesticide use, they kill beneficial insects. So like wasps, bees, and other beneficial insects that eat the pests that we don't want in our fruits and vegetables or in our plants. Pesticide use will wipe out their population.
Yes.
So some of them will become extinct, but also reduce them. So they're not available for us to have protection against the dangerous pests. Mm-hmm. We also find pesticide residue may end up in our food, and this has been confirmed by the Pesticides Control Authority here in Jamaica, where from between 2009 to 2014, and of their sample fruits and vegetables, 11% had pesticide residue in them. So this is a reality. We don't make things up. This is the government-owned data that we're calling on. Mm-hmm. But they also harm plants and animals in the spring. So when I talk about aquatic pollution, we're talking about our springs or river and sea. Pesticide residue going there and destroy the ability of many plants and animals to reproduce. So we're going to have a collapse of plants and animals within the biosphere or within the environment. But also water pollution by pesticide contribute to acid rain. So on top of climate change, I know it's affecting us. These things are very dangerous. Mm-hmm. But talking about the impact on human health, it's a very, very serious thing. And the funny thing is that the government have access to the data. You do a search and you'll see, they will realize how it's affecting farmers. And it's not just only in Jamaica, but even worldwide in terms of poisoning, through our unintentional poisoning from using pesticides. There's very, like on a global scale, they're saying that, let's see, get the exact figure in terms of the number of people. Like every year from unintentional pesticide poisoning, 11,000 people, get poisoned from using pesticide. And, this is small because they're saying there's underreporting of pesticide poisoning.
Of course, there's underreporting because, I mean, my father was poisoned and, there was, you didn't even have a place to report to because you were told that, okay, it's poison and it's most possibly related to the use of the Roundup. But then where do you go with it from there? And we see
it goes nowhere. And it's affecting farmers and it's also affecting agricultural workers. But since the Green Revolution, just to show you pesticide has been dangerous, it has been implicated in over 14 million intentional poison where people commit suicide by using pesticide. And this is since the 1960s. 14 million people have died from intentional pesticide poisoning. So it's something that we really have to organize against, and it's only getting worse because each year we import over 10,000 tons of pesticide into the Caribbean. So it's not just a Jamaican problem, but it's a Caribbean-wide problem that's going on, and
so even when
something we have to organize again.
So even while we talk about, which is we tend to talk about the health and the environmental impacts, there are also economic and social consequences. Help us to understand what those are. And at the end of this, I know I have to wrap one at about 9:15, so I'm just kind of putting you on standby there. But here's the thing. Our government has told us time and time again that this is no problem. I hear you talk about what they set up and so on. This is okay. Regardless of what's happening in Europe, no problem. But there must be some other implications when you talk. After taking us through the environmental impacts and the health impacts on the economy, and we're talking about the social consequences.
Well, it affects us, one, if we're talking about the impact on the health of people, it means that we're going to have a population of people that are sick. For example, with farmers, when they experience poisoning through pesticide use, it means they're not able to contribute. So that affects the level of productivity in the farming sector. And then even the workers are affected. So if you're sick, you get poisoned by pesticide, you're not able to contribute as a worker and earn an income. And we don't live in a society where we have unemployment benefits, like we have in the imperialist countries, that after unemployment, you meet their criteria, you can collect unemployment insurance until you get back to work, or you exceed the period of the benefits period. We don't have that. So we're talking about suffering that's taken in the small farm sector, and also the reduced productivity, because already Jamaica is finding it hard to find agricultural workers. The wages are so poor. The work is terrible. Working conditions are terrible. Many people don't want to work as agricultural workers. So it will affect our level of productivity at the economic level. I haven't seen any data on the economic impact. You just know that it is impacting us. There may be data out there.
I hope there is. I hope that at UWI and NCU and so on, they're doing some of these studies. And what are the agricultural schools that we have? Parsley Gardens used to be. Then I think Elim there. I hope that at the tertiary level, in academia, we see some of those studies coming up. So then one of the things that you always talk about here is the alternative solutions, and you already raised some of those in the space. Right. So let us go to alternatives and solutions.
Well, solutions are always important. They have these pesticides that they call biorationals or biopesticides. They have no negative impact on human health or on the environment. So this is very real, because two UWI professors from the science area, they did a study of the use of biopesticides, and we're talking about organic forms of pesticide. They're not deadly to people and they're not deadly to the environment. And they found that they were just as effective as the highly hazardous pesticides that are being imported into Jamaica. And this is very crucial, there was no impact on yield. There wasn't a reduction. So it's comparable in terms of using the deadly chemicals that we're using. So there's an alternative, but I suspect that the price of the biopesticides would be higher than the chemical pesticides. So that can become a barrier. So yes, they may be both effective, but already small farmers are strapped when it comes to working capital or cash just to carry out daily or weekly farm activities. So that is an issue in terms of affordability.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the good fertilizer, the things that are good, like organic food is more grown food is more expensive than chemical produced food. So that would be a challenge. So, but the issue is that there is alternative in terms of that. Mm-hmm. My approach in terms of alternative is to use a system approach to providing soil fertility as well as dealing with pests that are in the environment. So my approach is to use what they call a food forest system, where we mimic the structure of a forest. When we look at a forest, the forest doesn't go to farm store to buy fertilizer. It doesn't go out to buy pesticide, because it is a system and it is able to control pests within its environment. We're doing the very same thing. And that's why when we talk about the lack of biodiversity or the reduction in biodiversity by using chemical fertilizer or using maybe it's highly hazardous pesticide, we need beneficial insects in the environment. Recently, I went to radar training for dasheen farmers. I don't grow dasheen, but it's the same place I want to meet the other farmers in the community. And the radar person was pointing to a bug called the assassin bug. He said bugs usually attracted to sorrel plants and also hibiscus. So there may be other plants that attracted. If you use deadly pesticide and wipe out the assassin bug, it makes us more dependent on highly hazardous pesticides or the more expensive biopesticides or biorationals to deal with pests out there. So when we talk about the negative effect of chemical pesticide, this is what it will do. So my approach is to plant different things that can attract beneficial insects. But we run into a problem in Jamaica is that we don't do enough research and in documenting the names of the plants that we have that attract specific insects. So that you can plant these flowers around so they can bring insects. They're dependent on the research that has taken place in imperialist North America and Europe.
I would like to see the work that Dr. Clark, Nigel Clark's wife, right, who was, isn't this what she used to do at UWI? I'm not quite sure if she's still there, but this is naming plants. That's her forte as far as I know. And
right.
It would be good to see her research. And if she has anything along those lines, I think I'll go take a look at that. But you talk about that also, and I noticed that the Scientific Research Council, they're hosting a series of activities this month, because this is what Scientific Research Council month or something, Science and Technology Month. And what would you like to see coming out of that? Because I'm looking at the theme, which is harnessing innovation in the application of science and technology for national development. Within the context of what we're talking about here, what would you like to see coming out of the Scientific Research Council, if anything?
Well, one thing I would love to see is them prioritizing alternative approaches to agriculture, the non-chemical, the non-industrial, capitalist industrial model of farming, and on a practical level, to start to carry out research, especially when we talk about pesticides, is to identify the plants that we have in Jamaica and what type of insects, beneficial insects they attract, so that when we're doing our farming, we can plant these things. For example, for me, like I plant mint plants, and also flowers. I don't know if these flowers attract beneficial insects, but one thing I know, they do attract pollinators. So you put them there because they have beautiful flowers. You hope they will attract it. So you plant those things throughout your farm as a way, but it's just kind of random. It's not like when you're in imperialist North America, Europe, and if you put the time, it will attract this type of plant. If you plant tomato and pepper, they will attract insects that will protect them against certain pests. We need that type of research. So the Scientific Research Council need to lobby the government for them to put the funding in place and also foundation to put the money in place so that researchers can go out there and start to figure things out. Just like all those two UA professors were able to do a research project to see how does, a biopesticide work in terms of preventing infestation of callaloo and pakcho. And they're saying it's just as effective as a highly hazardous pesticide, and it doesn't result in a reduction in yield. Because that's a big thing for farmers. Don't come and tell us that this is effective, but then it reduces our income.
Yeah. I'm reminded of the two young men, not so young anymore because that was from mid-2000s, who from Stairtown Academy, who developed their own pesticide and insecticide it was. And they won the national competition, and then they went to Canada, and I think that regional competition, they won that also. I remember that I spent months and months and years actually at this program just trying to get the attention of the then government to say, pay some attention, give them the necessary funding that they're going to need now to take it from here. But I haven't heard anything since, and that's quite a while back.
Right, and also what we can do is use YouTube to find information about pesticide solutions, like home-based solutions that we can use. Yes. The baking soda is a very effective ingredient in making home-based pesticides. So there's information out there.
So we can use baking powder on something like the frangipani. You know those worms that turn bug that eat the frangipani flowers? You know them?
No.
Maybe send some pictures. Go give you. No, they're scary, but and they're plenty. They're pretty too, but they're pretty ugly. And it's just a whole. When they come for the frangipani, nothing is left.
Right.
And then they turn into bugs and so on. So I need to know what to get rid of them. What I can use, if baking powder or something like that. But listen,
baking soda.
In some of
the solutions, you can put olive oil or you can put essential oil in it. But just get the mixing level right in terms of measuring what a teaspoon or tablespoon to so much water. So we can do that. But I believe in using the system approach of your whole farming operation is geared towards using natural practices to make, so you're guarding against it, just as always in the forest.
So this is what it is.
Go in the forest, do you see the leaves eaten up? No, because you have a wide range of plant life, and they attract beneficial insects that will eat the pests. So they're able to keep the pest level, population level under control. And it's the same thing we have to, that's why I'm talking about, we use a food forest system, mimicking the 7 layers that are present in a natural forest in order to provide, build soil fertility and also control pest population.
Sister P just sent me a note. Yeah, go ahead. No, go finish your sentence. Yeah,
it's a slower process when you rebuild them, because we're used to farming where you have 10 acres under, say callaloo, or 10 acres under coconut or banana. The forest is more diverse. When you go in the forest and you see a cluster of trees, you may find 7, and if there are like 10 or 12 trees there, maybe only 2 or 3 of them may be from the same species of plant. You may have 8 to 9 different trees in this an area. That is biodiversity that we find in nature. But we don't see that in farming taking place now, where you look at place now like 4 acres of pumpkin. Pumpkin alone. They're not even doing intercropping where you have pumpkin and corn and peas, and they serve different functions. Just one thing, the pests love that.
It's a kind of, yeah. Sister P, send me this note. She says, I have charts on companion farming and it needs to be taught. Do you know that? Okay.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. These are research that comes from abroad.
Yeah.
So so we can use them because they work in our environment. But when you're farming, you see plants out there with pretty colors, and you see bees coming to them, you see other insects, and we don't even know the names of these insects.
Yeah.
They could be beneficial insects. So if we know the name of this plant, what beneficial insects they attract, then we could put them in our farm so that they will protect against, and we would reduce our need for pesticide. And The thing about it, when you do farming and you're using a natural system, what we call weeds, we see some weeds with very pretty flowers, and we see insects on them. Don't know the name of the insects. Because one of the things you realize when you're in the Caribbean, we have, and especially Jamaica, a very diverse population of insects. When you leave Kingston or Spanish Town and you come into the deep country, you see all these insects that sometimes they're frightening. Can you think,
I'm if I tell you. Yeah, it is true. They're beautiful, beautifully ugly. You're afraid of them too. But and this is my thinking of the frangipani worm bug, because they're coming in hundreds or thousands, it look like to me, and then you don't want to kill them because you say, but they must good for something. Like, where are you coming from to just invade me yard like this? And then you're gone. Every year you come and then you're gone around the same time like Bird Samuel's bird and we have on in veranda in Kingston. But, that's an aside. I'm going to wrap now, but let me just one quick word because we're totally out of time. As a reminder to what we can do in terms of getting rid of Roundup, especially because people are still using it to spray them yard, just to spray them yard.
Education is critical, and we have to realize we have to deal with challenges around these things. For example, in the farming sector, we have a labor shortage among small farmers. Because even sometimes when you want to hire someone to work, sometimes they don't want to work for small farmers. It's crazy. Some people say, look, they don't want to get rich off of them, but they'll go on the big estates, the big capitalist estates, and work for less money than what they would get per day from small farmers, and work for these capitalist big estate plantation owners, but they don't want to work for small farmers, even though they extract a higher wage per day, because they will go and work for $3,000 a day in the big estate, but they don't want to work for $5,000 a day for a small farmer.
There is a need to get rid of a stigma around farming too, and I think a lot of conversation around that, but I haven't seen any pointed intervention to get rid of that stigma, but I know that it has been said many times.
To get rid of the stigma, we need land reform in Jamaica. That's why these clowns that are going around so that they're peddling reparations, they don't want to put any pressure on the government that appointed them to these reparations commission across the Caribbean.
Anytime you talk about reparations, they call it, you must not name call people on the program.
To put land in the hands of small farmers and poor people.
I noticed that you always name call the people who are going around with reparations, which should include myself. So you can't call us clowns. But thank you so much for your input. May
I talk to you? Me know who may talk about, that these people are grown and have been appointed by the same Babylonian system that oppresses us, but they can't touch certain subjects and reparations.
We are totally out of time, Ajamu. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you so much, my brother. As usual, and once again, just to say, keep the farming going because you are an example to all of us on this side of the town. Thank you so much.
Thanks for that. Just thanks for the opportunity for reason on a subject.
Yeah. All right.